Welcome back to Sinister Chronicles, where darkness never rests. Today, we delve into the haunting tale of Whispers in the Dark, a novel of mystery, dark secrets, and buried truths. Get ready, because once you step into this world, there's no turning back. Chapter 1. The Shadows in the Corner. The wind howled outside, a cold, unrelenting force pressing against the house. Emma sat in her room, hugging her knees to her chest. The corners of her room were dark, too dark, as if something was hiding in them. She'd seen them before, shapes that moved in the periphery of her vision, voices that whispered when no one was around. Today, the shadows were thicker, more menacing. She could hear them more clearly now. Low murmurs, like voices carried on the wind. They were calling her name, telling her to come closer. Come closer, Emma. Her mother called from downstairs, her voice strained, but Emma couldn't move. Her feet felt frozen to the floor. The whispers grew louder. Come closer. No, she thought, shaking her head. She had to leave the room, leave the house. She had to escape the darkness before it swallowed her. She bolted from the room and ran down the hallway, her breath shallow and quick, her heart pounding in her chest. Emma! Her mother's voice echoed through the house as she stood by the door, her face pale. We need to talk. Emma ignored her. She couldn't speak. The shadows were already at her back, closing in. Chapter 2. The Doctor. The following day, Emma's parents took her to see Dr. Ian Hayes. The psychologist's office smelled sterile, filled with the faint scent of old books and antiseptic. There were calming paintings on the walls, pictures of oceans, fields of flowers, the sun dipping behind distant mountains. All things that seemed so far removed from the darkness Emma felt creeping at the edges of her life. Dr. Hayes was a tall, middle-aged man with thick glasses and a kind smile. He greeted Emma with a gentle nod, but there was something about the way his eyes flickered to the corner of the room, just as Emma had done 1,000 times before. He didn't seem to be looking at her directly, but somewhere over her shoulder, as though he was waiting for something to appear. How are you feeling today, Emma? He asked, his voice calm and steady, his hands folded neatly on the desk. Emma could only look at him, her eyes wide and anxious. They're in the walls. I can hear them, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Hayes leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but not alarmed. Who, Emma? Who are you hearing? She swallowed hard. The people. The shadows. They tell me to come closer. They say they're waiting for me. Tell me more about these shadows, Dr. Hayes said, his voice still soft. What do they look like? Emma shivered as she recalled the shape, the figure she saw in the corner. It was always darker than the rest of the room, never fully solid, as if it moved between the light and dark. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the feeling she got from it, the intense pull, the way it seemed to want her to come closer. They don't have faces, Emma said, her voice trembling. They're just there. and they make me feel like I have to go to them. Chapter 3. The Past That Won't Fade. As the weeks passed, Emma's visits to Dr. Hayes continued. Her parents were concerned, but Emma felt a strange comfort in talking to him. Dr. Hayes was kind, attentive, but there was something else. Something about him that seemed off. He always seemed to be waiting for something, his eyes drifting to the windows, as though expecting someone to arrive. One day, after a particularly unsettling session, Emma noticed a photo on Dr. Hayes' desk. It was a picture of a group of people standing together in front of a building. One of them was a man Emma recognized from her dreams, his face shadowed but familiar. Dr. Hayes noticed her staring. "That's a photo from the old town hall," he said, his voice almost too quiet. "It's where the tragedy happened. I was involved years ago." Emma's heart skipped. What tragedy? Dr. Hayes hesitated, then sighed, as if debating how much to reveal. There was an accident, a fire. Many people died. It changed everything for this town. But the shadows, Emma started, her voice tight with fear. They feel like they're connected to it. Dr. Hayes' face tightened. The past has a way of lingering. It never truly fades. Chapter 4. Echoes of the Past. As Emma's visions grew more intense, she started to connect the dots between the shadows and the town's dark history. She began asking around, speaking to older residents, some of whom had known the people in the photo. They spoke of a fire that had destroyed the town's old hall, taking the lives of several people, including a family that had lived there for generations. One evening, as Emma lay in bed, the whispers returned, louder than ever before. "Come closer, Emma." She tried to block them out, but the voices were too insistent. They were in the walls. They were everywhere. She climbed out of bed and walked toward the living room, where her parents were watching TV. But just as she reached the hallway, she saw it, a shadow at the end of the corridor, standing motionless, watching her. It wasn't one of the usual figures. This one was different. It was tall, its form distorted, like it was wearing a cloak of darkness. And in the darkness, Emma saw something she hadn't before. A face, just barely visible, like a reflection in the glass. It was Dr. Hayes. Chapter 5. The Truth. The next day, Emma couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. What was happening? Why was she seeing Dr. Hayes' face in the shadow? And why was the pull so strong? She sat in Dr. Hayes' office that afternoon, her nerves on edge. The whispers had followed her all day. She could feel them now, swirling in the air between her and the doctor. She looked at him, and this time she noticed something different. His eyes were vacant, like he wasn't really there at all. "Dr. Hayes," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Are you real?" He didn't respond right away, his gaze drifting to the corner of the room. Slowly, he turned to her, his expression somber. "No," he said softly, "I'm not." Emma's heart pounded as the realization hit her like a tidal wave. The shadows, the whispers, they were all connected to Dr. Hayes. But why? Why was he here in her world, pulling her closer? And then it came. The truth she had feared. Dr. Hayes had been dead all along. His tragic past, the fire, the accident, it had all tied him to this moment. And Emma, with her gift, had been helping him find peace. Chapter 6. Letting Go. As Emma faced the truth, she realized that the only way to end the haunting was to help Dr. Hayes move on. The shadows, the voices, they had all been echoes of his unresolved past. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered into the stillness of the room, "You don't have to stay here anymore. It's time to let go." For the first time, the shadows in the corner faded, the whispers silenced. Emma felt a weight lift from her chest, and the room seemed to brighten as Dr. Hayes's presence finally disappeared. When she opened her eyes, she was alone, and for the first time in years, Emma felt at peace. Chapter 7. A Quiet Goodbye. The silence in the room was overwhelming. For the first time, Emma felt the weight of the world shift. The shadows that had always haunted her seemed to have vanished, leaving a stillness that felt almost serene. Emma sat still, unsure whether the world outside had changed, or if it was just her perception. Had she really helped a ghost move on? She reached for Dr. Hayes' business card, now smudged and fading as if it were disappearing. A soft voice broke her reverie. "You did good, Emma," she turned. But the office was empty. There was no sign of Dr. Hayes. Just the faintest trace of a smile on his face lingered in her memory. Emma stood up, blinking rapidly, her mind racing. Had the shadows really gone? Or was it all just in her mind? As she struggled to make sense of it all, the door opened. Her mother stood in the doorway, concern in her eyes. "Emma, are you all right?" "I'm okay, Mom," Emma replied, her voice steady for the first time in a long while. Her mother's worried gaze seemed to soften. "You've seemed distant lately, but you look different now." "I think I'm just tired," Emma said, though she wasn't sure why. It felt like so much had happened, yet she still couldn't shake the unease that lingered. Her mother stepped closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this together." Emma believed her for the first time in months. The weight that had clung to her family, the fear and tension, seemed to be fading. But as she glanced toward the window, a flicker in her vision made her uneasy. She quickly turned her head, but saw nothing. "Mom," Emma asked, "what happened to the people in the fire?" Her mother hesitated. "It's in the past, Emma. It's over. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Why had Dr. Hayes been tied to that tragedy? Had the fire really been an accident? Or was there more to the story? Before she could ask more, a chill swept through the room, and a whisper, almost inaudible, came from behind her. "You've forgotten, Emma. We're still here." Emma whipped around, but the room was empty. The whisper wasn't her imagination, it was real. Chapter 8. Unfinished Business. Over the next few days, Emma couldn't ignore the feeling that something was still off. The shadows might have disappeared from her room, but a lingering sense of unfinished business clung to her. She couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Hayes' involvement wasn't the only thing that had tied the spirits to her, that there were still ghosts from the past in the town, ghosts that weren't ready to leave. She began visiting the local library, spending hours combing through old records, newspaper clippings, and photographs of the town's history. As she sat at a table, an old newspaper caught her eye, its headline marking the anniversary of the fire that had ravaged the old town hall. The date. It matched the day she'd seen Dr. Hayes for the first time. As she read through the article, she found a chilling detail. A name. A person who had survived the fire. Someone who had vanished shortly afterward without a trace. And the name was Hayes. The article mentioned nothing more about this mysterious figure, but Emma's blood ran cold. The connections were undeniable. Dr. Hayes hadn't just been tied to the tragedy, he was part of it. But there was something even darker. The fire hadn't been an accident. It had been set, and the survivors, like Dr. Hayes, had kept the town's secret buried deep for years. Emma shivered, as if the air around her had suddenly thickened. It wasn't over, not yet. She gathered the newspaper and left the library, a sense of urgency building in her chest. Dr. Hayes' unfinished business wasn't just about him. It was about everything the fire had destroyed. Chapter 9. The Truth Beneath the Ashes. Emma stood at the ruins of the old town hall that night, the place where everything had started. The walls were blackened, charred, but there was something eerie about the place. It was as though the fire had never truly consumed it. She could feel it now, an unmistakable presence. The air was thick with something old, something unresolved. As she walked through the burnt remains of the building, she heard it again, the whisper. "You should have let it go, Emma." This time, Emma didn't turn around. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was done running. And then, in the silence of the ruins, she understood. It wasn't just Dr. Hayes who had been trapped here. It was everyone who had died that night. The souls of those who perished in the fire, angry, unresolved. But Emma had learned something new. She knew how to help them find peace, and she would do it. All of them. No more whispers, no more shadows. With a deep breath, Emma stepped forward into the heart of the old hall, where the fire had once burned brightest. And as she did, she whispered, "It's time to let go." Chapter 10. The Gathering Shadows. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that felt like a deep breath held by the earth itself. The old town hall loomed before Emma, a skeleton of what it once was. The charred ruins stood as a testament to something darker, a place where too many had suffered. Emma stepped forward, her steps deliberate, as if each one was pulling her closer to the truth. Her eyes scanned the remains of the building, the weight of what had happened pressing against her chest. She knew she wasn't alone. She could feel them, the spirits, the souls that had been trapped here for so long. They were waiting, not for revenge, but for peace, for someone to finally acknowledge them, for someone to guide them home. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached out to touch a blackened beam. The memories of the fire, the screams, the helplessness, they flooded her mind. But it wasn't just the fire. It was everything that had followed. The anger, the guilt, the denial. "We never left," a voice whispered, soft but insistent. Emma's breath hitched. She turned toward the sound. The shadows were thick, but there was no one there. Still, she felt the presence of many, figures just beyond her sight, moving in the periphery. "They're all here," Emma whispered to herself, realizing the magnitude of the situation. These weren't just the souls of people who had died in the fire. There were others. Dr. Hayes had been right. There was unfinished business, and it wasn't just his own. The whispers grew louder. The spirits were becoming more desperate, more eager, but Emma wasn't afraid. She understood now. She had been brought here to guide them, to help them release their sorrow, and to let them move on. She closed her eyes, focusing on the voices, letting them fill her. They weren't angry. They were lost, trapped by something that had kept them here for far too long. She could feel their pain, their confusion, their fear, and she realized the truth that had been lurking all along. The fire had not been an accident. It had been arson, but it wasn't just a tragedy. It was a cover-up. Dr. Hayes had known this. He had been a part of it. He had helped bury the truth, helping to suppress the knowledge that the fire had been set to silence those who knew too much. The families who had died in the fire had been trying to reveal the corruption that had poisoned the town, and the fire had been the answer to that, an answer that had destroyed everything. Emma gasped, her heart racing as the realization sank in. Dr. Hayes had been guilty too. Chapter 11. The revelation. The truth, like the darkness, was all-consuming. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. She couldn't let the past control her anymore. Not her, not the spirits, not anyone. As she stood in the remains of the town hall, a figure, emerged from the shadows. The faint outline of a man, tall, thin, wearing a dark coat, almost as if he had stepped out of the smoke itself. Emma's heart clenched. It was him, Dr. Hayes. But now, there was no kindness in his eyes. There was no calm assurance. His face was drawn with anguish, and his posture was one of defeat. He wasn't there to help. He was there to beg for forgiveness. Emma. Dr. Hayes' voice cracked. His tone was not the gentle, caring psychologist she had once known. It was full of regret, full of pain. I'm sorry, I should have told you. I should have never involved you in this. Emma stepped back, feeling the weight of his words. Her mind reeled. He's the one who was keeping them trapped. It wasn't just the fire. It was his own guilt. Why? She whispered, her voice shaky but determined. Why didn't you tell the truth? Why did you let them suffer? Dr. Hayes lowered his head, his shoulders slumping. I thought I could bury it. I thought if I could just keep going, keep pretending, the truth would never come to light. But it was too late. The fire had already happened. The damage had already been done. Emma's heart twisted. She understood now. Dr. Hayes had been both a victim and a perpetrator. He had been complicit in covering up the fire, in silencing the voices of those who wanted to expose the truth. And in doing so, he had condemned himself to live with the ghosts of those he had failed. But Emma also knew that he was just a man who had been lost, just like the others. It's not too late, Dr. Hayes, Emma said quietly. You don't have to keep them here. You can help them move on. You can make it right. Chapter 12, The Release. Dr. Hayes stared at her, his eyes full of sorrow. I don't deserve peace. None of us do. We're all stained by what happened. Emma interrupted him. It's not about what you deserve. It's about setting them free. It's about letting them go. She stepped toward him, her voice steady now. You can't keep hiding from the truth, and neither can they. Slowly, he nodded, as if coming to terms with something he had known deep down all along. The air around them grew heavier. The shadows began to shift, the figures becoming clearer. They had heard her. They had been waiting for her to speak the words that would free them. The whispers quieted, and the once foreboding darkness that had filled the room started to dissipate, replaced by a soft, glowing light. Emma felt her heart race as she reached out toward the spirits, her hand outstretched. She could see them now, faces of men and women, some familiar, others not, but all of them now at peace. They were no longer trapped in the building. They were no longer bound by their anger and their grief. One by one, the figures began to fade, their forms dissolving into the light that enveloped the room. The fire, the pain, the anger. It was all melting away, leaving only calm. Dr. Hayes stood beside her, his face now calm, his guilt and sorrow dissolving with the spirits. He nodded once more, and then, just as the last of the shadows faded, he too began to vanish. His form blurred into the light, leaving behind only a faint memory, a whisper of a man who had finally found redemption. Chapter 13. Letting Go. The morning light broke through the dark sky, casting a soft glow over the ruins of the town hall. Emma stood alone in the rubble, the weight of everything that had happened lifting from her shoulders. It was over. The spirits had moved on. Dr. Hayes had found peace, and Emma, at long last, was free of the shadows that had haunted her for so long. She turned and walked away from the sight, the rising sun warming her face. She was no longer the frightened child who had once seen only darkness in the corners of the room. She was someone new, someone who had faced the truth, confronted the past, and emerged stronger for it. As she made her way home, she felt a sense of calm wash over her, the echoes of the whispers now fading into nothingness. She was free, and for the first time in her life, Emma knew that she was ready to move forward. The end.
In the midnight glow where the stars align, we lose ourselves in the rhythm divine. Underneath the sky painted with dreams, we're chasing the echoes of silent screams. Caught in the spell of the cosmic night, where fantasies bloom in the pale moonlight. We'll let go of all that we know and dance in the stardust's gentle flow. Dancing in the stardust, we're weightless and free in a world of wonders. Just you and me, lost in the moment. Our spirits ignite as we twirl in the magic of the cosmic light. Among constellations we'll find our way, through the celestial symphony we'll sway. With every step we leave our cares behind. In this celestial ballroom, love's defined. Caught in the spell of the cosmic night, where fantasies bloom in the pale moonlight. Dancing in the stardust, we're weightless and free in a world of wonders. Just you and me, lost in the moment. Our spirits ignite as we twirl in the magic of the cosmic light. The shimmering galaxies will find our way, guided by love's everlasting sway. With each celestial heartbeat we dance on in this cosmic gate, as we twirl in the magic of the cosmic light.